Matthew begins his gospel with a genealogy of 42 names leading from Abraham all the way to Jesus. And most of these are men, father to son, but there's 5 women. We're at one of the last ones, Bathsheba, this famous story of David and Bathsheba and her unique contribution into the line of the kings, into the line of Jesus. There's maybe more than you might expect with her story. So let's dive in to Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah. 2 Samuel 11. In the spring, when kings go off to war, David sent Joab, along with his servants and all the Israelites, and they destroyed the Ammonites, attacking the city of Rabbah. But David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his couch and was pacing back and forth on the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. David sent someone and inquired about the woman. The report came back, "Isn't this Eliam's daughter Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" So David sent messengers to take her. When she came to him, he had sex with her. Now, she had been purifying herself after her monthly period. Then she returned home. The woman conceived and sent word to David. "I'm pregnant," she said. Then David sent a message to Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." So Joab sent Uriah to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked about the welfare of Joab and the army and how the battle was going. Then David told Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." Uriah left the palace, and a gift from the king was sent after him. However, Uriah slept at the palace entrance with all his master's servants. He didn't go down to his own house. David was told Uriah didn't go down to his own house, so David asked Uriah, "Haven't you just returned from a journey? Why didn't you go home? The chest and Israel and Judah are all living in tents." Uriah told David, "And my master Joab and my master's troops are camping in the open field. How could I go home and eat, drink, and have sex with my wife? I swear on your very life I will not do that." Then David told Uriah, "Stay here one more day. Tomorrow I'll send you back." So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem that day. The next day David called for him, and he ate and drank. David got him drunk. In the evening Uriah went out to sleep in the same place alongside his master's servants, but he did not go down to his own home. The next morning David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. He wrote in the letter, "Place Uriah in the front of the fiercest battle and then pull back from him, so that he will be struck down and die." So as Joab was attacking the city, he put Uriah in the place where he knew there was strong warriors. When the city's soldiers came out and attacked Joab, some of the people from David's army fell. Uriah the Hittite was also killed. Joab sent a complete report of the battle to David. "When you have finished reporting all the news of the battle to the king," Joab instructed the messenger, "if the king gets angry and asks you, 'Why did you go so close to the city to fight? Didn't you know they would shoot from the wall? Who killed Jerubaal's son Abimelech? Didn't a woman throw an upper millstone on top of him from the wall so that he died in Thebez? Why did you go so close to the wall?' Then say, 'Your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead too.'" So the messenger sent off, and when he arrived, he reported to David everything Joab sent him to say. "The men overpowered us," the messenger told David. "They came out against us in the open field, but we fought against them up to the entrance of the city gate. Archers shot down on your servants from the wall. Some of the king's servants died, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead too." David said to the messenger, "Say this to Joab, don't be upset about this, because the sword is that way, taking the life of this person or that person. Continue attacking the city and destroy it. Encourage Joab." When Uriah's wife heard that her husband Uriah was dead, she mourned for her husband. After the time of mourning was over, David sent for her and brought her back to his house. She became his wife and bore him a son, but what David had done was evil in Yahweh's eyes. So we're looking at Bathsheba in particular. How did the wife of Uriah come to be in the line of genealogies of Jesus in Matthew chapter 1? And this is the famous story, the downfall of David. There's a few fascinating observations to point out. One, I love the way that this narration starts. In the spring, when kings go off to war. So there's a time of the year when kings are supposed to be at war. This actually goes back to the original calling of the king in the beginning of Samuel. When the people ask for a king, they specifically ask for a king to go off and fight our battles. Saul, the first chosen king of Israel, doesn't do that. And actually, the famous story of David and Goliath is David is acting more like a king than Saul was, because Saul was the one who's supposed to fight the battles for Israel, but he's cowering in the tent. David goes out and kills Goliath. And so David has already shown himself to be an exemplary king. But here, when the kings go off to war, what is David doing? David remained in Jerusalem. Like, this whole first verse is just filled with that kind of anticipation. Something wrong is going to happen here. It's unfortunate, sadly, throughout church history, people have read this to this day in the modern world and somehow put some sort of blame on Bathsheba, as if she was being scandalous here. And the story doesn't play that out at all. It's completely David. Another big reference that would be really helpful to have in mind is the story of the fall in Genesis chapter 3. So some of the same exact words. One of the things, this image of the tree of good and bad, right? Or knowledge of good and evil. And there, if you recall, it was Eve being tempted by the snake. And some of the same words show up in this story here. So Eve sees that the tree was good and delightful and desiring to make her wise, she took it and she ate it. And what does David do here? So David is having his own tree of the knowledge of good and evil moment because he's not where he's supposed to be. He's walking on the roof, and what does he do? He sees that a woman was very, and this is actually the word in Hebrew, tov, was very good. He sees that she looks good, and so he inquires about her, and he actually knows, like, it's not, this kind of underlines the fact that he knows exactly what he's doing, and he wasn't mistaken. He didn't get tricked into thinking that she was single. He knows right away. Isn't this Eliam's daughter, Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Actually, in the Hebrew, it kind of looks to me, it's a little ambiguous, but this could actually be in David's voice. This could be the messenger telling him, this is Eliam's daughter. It could be him asking, isn't that Eliam's daughter Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah? In which case it's even worse, because he's a friend of Uriah. Uriah is one of his great warriors, and he's saying, isn't that Uriah's wife? I don't know. That's at least possible in the Hebrew. But then here, David sent messengers to what? To take her. So just as Eve saw that the tree was good and she took it, David sees that this woman looks good and he takes her. It's like, this is the tree moment for David, and he fails the test. So he takes her, he has sex with her, and sure enough, she comes back, she's pregnant, so now he has to cover it all up. And to cover this up, he lies. He's already committed adultery, and now he's going to commit multiple murders, actually. Like he goes off to kill Uriah, but the only way to do that is to allow many other people to die as well. And so he tells Joab to make sure that Uriah falls. And when he falls, the only way to do that without just full-on assassination is to send him into the front of the line and then pull back some of the troops. And so not only did Uriah die, but many of the people, some of the people from David's army fell along with Uriah the Hittite. So this is just to say, like, this starts off with Bathsheba being taken like that piece of fruit and being used and objectified in this sad way. David then goes down this rabbit hole of sin. Not only has he committed adultery, he's now committed multiple murders. And there's one thing about David that I'm always intrigued about this passage here. So it doesn't show up in the English as well, but there's the exact same phrase is repeated 2 times. Say this to Joab. In English it says, don't be upset about this, because the sword is that way. The actual Hebrew there is don't see this as evil in your eyes. Don't see this as evil in your eyes, because the sword is that way. And it translates, don't be upset about this. But then here, so David is saying to Joab, don't see this as evil. It just happens. But right here at the end, ominously, but what David had done was evil in the Lord's eyes. So David is looking at this situation saying, don't call this evil. God is looking at this situation and saying, this was absolutely evil. And so there's this big setup here where David has really gone off the rails. David, who is called a man after God's own heart, in this one moment is acting so contrary to God's own heart that he's actually calling something good when God is calling it evil. Why, though, is Bathsheba why does she make it all the way into the lineage of the kings of the Messiah? We're going to actually take one more dive into Bathsheba's story next week, but even here, we see some of the same things we've seen so far. The 4 women in the Old Testament, Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and now Bathsheba, are all either explicitly Gentile, or at least it seems implied that they're Gentile. Bathsheba, we don't actually get her lineage directly, but she's the wife of Uriah the Hittite, who clearly is a Gentile. And so even here, there's something about Bathsheba being an outsider that this story is not so much about her, but more about David. But the fact that, once again, we have another woman in the lineage of Jesus being of Gentile origin seems really interesting to me. God seems adamant to say that my people are not just those that are blood related to Israel, but God keeps grafting in people that are outside into the very core of his family, into the very lineage of Jesus himself.